If you don't already know me, I'm Grace, and I'm going to be doing a workshop today on fixing body cords. So you already determined that your body cord was the problem, either by wiggling the connection, and either when you held the plastic part and wiggled the wire, a white light went off, or when you held the wire still and wiggled the connection, a white light went off. So the first thing we're going to fix is when the connection is loose. So you do that by what everybody calls stretching the prongs. We're gonna use a small screwdriver. There are plenty of them in the cage, and you just and this style of body cord, there's a slot, and you stick the screwdriver in, and just give a little twist to pry it apart. We're gonna try, and then you do the same for both the big and the little prongs. Try not to stab yourself, but just gotta do your best. And what that does is it widens those up so the connection gets more snug and doesn't wiggle as much. On a different style of prong, you can do it. It looks like there are strips running down, and so you have to insert the screwdriver a different way. I don't know how you guys can see, but again, not to stab yourself. Don't do that. You just wiggle it in there. You kind of have to work at it, and then in the end, the prong will end up with a little bulge out like that, right there. And that will make the connection more secure, and then you won't get the annoying white lights. That was easy because it was just a connection problem. But if you held the plastic part and wiggled the wire and got a white light, then we actually have to take the body cord apart in order to fix that. So the tools that you'll need are just a screwdriver and ideally a safe place to put your screws and nuts. Actually, that body cord was missing it, but the first thing we have to do is we have to take off the clip. This is the most difficult part. So there's a really easy way to do this. Is you hold your thumb or your finger over the small screw, and then you grab the spindle and you just untwist, and it should unscrew quite easily. You always want to make sure that this part is tight, because otherwise you're going to lose your clip. If it unscrews during a bout, it'll just go flying and you will never find it again. So I'm going to use a little tin to put the little parts in. You want to be careful when you unscrew it because you have to have a firm grip on all of the parts, otherwise it will go across the cage or across the room, and then you'll have to go find it. And yeah, that's annoying. So now that we have that off, everything's pretty easy. It's just 2 screws. All you have to do is take an appropriately sized screwdriver and righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So I'm turning them counterclockwise to loosen. And you just loosen until the nuts drop. And yeah, there. Put the 2 nuts in your little tin. And you just gently take off the top part. Okay, gently. Leave it like this for a moment because you're going to need to mark it. So the big prong needs to go to the appropriate wire, and the little prong needs to go to the appropriate wire, and they need to go to the appropriate sides in the plastic part. Otherwise, either it's not going to work electrically or it won't fit into your body cord. So take a Sharpie, and on the thin prong, make a little black mark, and then make a black mark on the side of the plastic by it, and then ideally, it works out great if you have silver wire or if you have any wire plastic cover other than black, but I have black, so I'm going to use a silver Sharpie and just mark the wire, just so that I know that this goes to that, and it all will go on the one side, and that makes putting it back together easy, because then you don't have to take it apart, put it back together again, because you did something wrong. Okay, so that was that part. And actually, I did it on the wrong body cord. So I do it real quick again. Move my little tin of parts. So we're going to repeat that because I did it on the wrong cord that I have lying around here, and that one actually didn't have anything wrong with it. So you just unscrew the 2 screws. These aren't scary, by the way. There's only limited things you can do wrong, and you're not actually going to hurt them. So body cords are really great because you pretty much can't do anything to them that will like irreparably damage them. So don't be worried about that. Again, I'm going to mark thin prong, mark it on the prong, mark it on the plastic, and mark it on the wire. This time I'm going to mark it down further on the wire so that if I need to do any cutting up here, if a wire breaks, then I can do that without losing the mark. Only now that it's marked can I take it out of its plastic socket. The plastic bit. Okay. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the prongs are strongly attached to the wires and they're not budging. Sometimes the screws can come off, and if you pull your prong and it comes off, not a good connection. So in that instance, you would just unscrew the screw of the prong, and then you'd screw it back on. So the next thing you want to do is you want to grab the prong and grab the wire, and you want to tug, and you want to see if the wire stretches, because if it stretches, it means you have a broken wire somewhere. If it doesn't, then you're all set. And the same for this. Again, no broken wire. Usually what broken wires will happen up in here because that's where all the bending and pressure is. Okay, so no broken wires in this case. If your wire coating is clear, you'll be able to see the broken wire. It'll look like a dark black smudge. It'll pretty much look like there's no wire there because there's not. Okay, so in this case, my body cord was malfunctioning at this end. None of the wires are broken, and the prongs are firmly attached. So the next thing I'm going to do is, I noticed my wires have a little bit of discoloration here, probably because it's an old body cord. So I'm going to do the classic, take it apart and put it back together. So I'm going to unscrew the prong. Yeah, it looks all nasty. It just happens with sweat and normal wear. Okay. Okay, so now we're at the point where we took the 2 wires and the 2 prongs out. They're all marked, so we know how to put it back together. And now we're looking for the problem. We're looking for any broken wires. So we do that first by pulling on this one, and it's not budging. And then we do it when we pull on this one, and we come out with a tuft of wire. It means you have a broken wire. And you can tell how far down it is by looking at how long your tufts of wire are. So what that looks like, actually I did this. What that looks like is when sometimes you need a little more force than just your hand. So you grab the end of the wire with a set of pliers and you pull to find the broken wire. And then you'll come out with a tuft of wire that looks like this. So clearly broken wire. So what we do now is you want to separate the two strands down to about where you think the broken wire is. So I'm going to go even further down, and taking off more, we'll find it once we cut it. So now you're going to want a cutting implement. It's either like a pair of scissors, or I'm using my needle nose pliers that have a little cutter part at the back of them. So I'm just going to work my way down the wire, cutting the rubber plastic until I find wire. So there's a little tuft of wire, still not down far enough yet. You can kind of feel it too. It'll feel squishy and flat until you get down to the place where there is actually the good wire. It'll also get harder to cut. Okay, so you know you've hit the good wire when you can kind of like look in and see like the shiny, you just see the shiny wire in there. I know you can't see too well in the video because the video sucks. But, so now that we're down to the good wire, we're ready to put the prong back on. So what you want to do is you can either use a pair of wire strippers for this. There might be a pair in the cage. Or you can go around and just score the plastic using your chosen cutting device. I need to go get my scissors. Okay, so you use your scissors to because you lightly try and make incisions on the plastic coating without cutting the wire in between. So it takes kind of your own figuring out. Obviously, it's easy if you have a pair of wire strippers, then it's just like you select the size and you just chomp down all the way and then you just pull the plastic off. But yeah, we don't have that luxury. So once you've scored all the way around, you can try pulling on it. And so then the little plastic coating will pop off and you'll be left with a little nub of wire. You don't want the nub of wire to be too long, otherwise you can have like exposed wire that doesn't fit into the prong. After that, you twist the wire just to get it all tidy. Take your prong. Look inside and see that the set screw is all the way out. Mine isn't, so I'm going to unscrew it at the set screw. And you stuff it back on there, and then you screw it down until it's snug. You always want to make sure these have a secure connection, otherwise you're just going to have to go back and fix it again. Okay, so now we can't exactly put it together like this. So we're going to actually, even though the other one wasn't broken, we're still going to cut it apart anyways. And actually this was my thin prong, which I marked at the beginning, but my mark was on the part of wire that got removed. So I'm going to go ahead and make a mark on the wire right where I'm cutting, so that right where I can still have it, so that when I put it back together, it'll be better. It'll actually go smoothly. Okay. So how you cut this one down is you guesstimate how much, because we're going to cut it first. We're first going to cut the wire, and then we're going to strip the plastic coating off of it. So first, you want to cut it right about to how long the wire nub was. So, and you're going to cut it there first. It doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be pretty close. Otherwise, your cord won't go together well. Sometimes it can be a challenge to cut. Okay. And now do the same thing with your scissors to strip off the coating, just making small superficial cuts around the outside without cutting the main wire, and then pulling off your little coating, and you're left with the wire nib, which you twist to get it all in order. Your pin still attached to this one, unscrew it, screw it back on the other one. Body cords are actually fun, so weapons are much harder. So this is the good part. I don't know, nobody should ever have unfixed body cords because they're so easy. Yeah, so then just go back and make sure both of these are tight. Make sure that they're about the same distance. Clearly they're not perfect, but they're close enough. Good enough for government work, right? So now it's about putting the body cord back together. I have my thin prong with the marking, and I have the marking on the wire, and I have the marking on the plastic, or on the casing. So then this is it's an annoying part, where you just kind of have to, you seat the prongs back in, and then you kind of just have to make it fit around it. So you do that. So once they're somewhat seated, it's not going to be perfect. You put the top part on with the screws. I usually keep the screws in it. And if you're ever in doubt of which side the screw head goes on and which side the nuts go on, the nuts can sometimes stay in there, but you just look because the side that the nuts go on has a hexagonal indentation, whereas the side for the screws is just round. So trying to make it as easy as possible, right? And then you want to just kind of squish it down with your fingers and screw them in. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. With some body cords and some wires, depending on how well they squish in, you might have to do quite a bit of squishing or rearranging in the plastic to get them to get it to squish down enough. But this one went together smoothly. You just want to make sure these are snug to tight, because you don't want to lose those, because then you have to get more, and that's hard to find. Okay, this is the easy part. Now we have one thing left to do, which is put back on the spring clip. Usually people have a lot of trouble with this, but there's a really easy way to do it. So you have the small hole and the big hole. You take the screw and clip and you put that in the small hole, and you just hold it there with your finger. Pretty similar to what we did to take it apart. You have the spring and the spindle, and then you put it in the big hole, and then you kind of have to like feel around, and you push it in to get it centered, because you want to get it pretty much centered in there, and then you'll kind of feel when it's right. Fingers. So you're still holding the screw with your finger, and you're still holding the spindle with your hand, and you just turn it clockwise, and it could take a little bit because you're pushing against the spring, but it'll grab. And then you just screw it in like normal. Yep. And this is a good thing to do, is just always make sure that these are snug. So that's easy to do even when you have your body cord in. You can just absent-mindedly hold the screw, turn the spindle, make sure it's tight. Otherwise, you'll have difficulty clipping in if this is loose. And the worst case scenario is you lose it forever when it goes flying. So we just repaired the top part. It had a broken wire. So that would have shown when it would have been a white light when you wiggle here, or it could have been either an intermittent white light you get when wiggling, or a complete off target light, where the diagnostic sheet showed you that your body cord was the problem. So that's the front part. We're going to go to the back end of the body cord, because you can also have a problem there. So, and magically switch the cords here.